Thank you, Dr. Tony, for such an honorable and great introduction. I would like to just first appreciate the opportunity and acknowledge the people that are behind the microphones or behind me with respect to this presentation. They are doing a great work and really supporting me and helping all this to be a success. I'm going to be talking about the literature review, focusing in environmental and animal sciences. That is the topic of the day. So it's an invitation the invite was given to master's students and doctoral students. So I'm particularly looking at those students that are struggling with the idea or the concept of having to write a literature review, and students that are also that rather get stuck in the process of what to write and how to begin or how to go about writing this literature review. So having said that, let me just get on with the topic of the day. So first, let's look at what the literature review is. A literature review can be one of the first sections of an academic paper, or rather of an academic thesis or dissertation. So when you are preparing your write-up for submission, or preparing your thesis after having conceptualized your research, what you do is you focus on the literature and do a bit of literature review around the topic that one is studying or one is going to be embarking on. So this is normally done for dissertations, it's done also for thesis, but then it can also be done for research articles just as well. So literature reviews are also done for all these particular pieces of scholarly material. By definition, the literature review is a piece of academic writing demonstrating knowledge and understanding of the academic literature on a specific topic placed in context. Okay, so another definition I found is that it's an integrated synthesis drawing upon a selected list of academic sources, mainly journal articles, with a strong relation to the topic in question. So that is essentially the topic or the definition of what a literature review is. So the justification for a literature review is such that the literature review contextualizes research. So it brings out it doesn't just bring out, it ensures that what the researcher is doing is aligned, or it complements what is currently in literature, what is there. So you'll understand that as a researcher, what one does is you are essentially contributing to a body of literature. That is what your research will do when you are embarking or you are doing your research, whether master's or PhD. What you are going to do, hopefully, is contribute new information or new insights on a particular topic, say climate change. So you are going to make a contribution that is currently not there. So there should essentially be a gap in literature. You make a contribution. So when you've identified your topic, you've settled on a couple of objectives and things that you're going to do. So what you do is those objectives will yield information that is currently not available. So what your literature review does, it provides the context, it provides a background of what you're going to be contributing. Again, it summarizes the current literature on a specific topic. So that for purposes of publication. So this one now is in relation to when you're preparing a literature review for the purpose of publication. However, what it contains is basically summarized information that one will be able to embark on and just or rather, it summarizes the current literature that one is busy with. If you are going to be doing your research, or you've identified a research topic, basically the information around that particular topic, it's basically summarized in the form of a literature review. So all those 2 points essentially are what they are doing is basically they are justifying the purpose of why one needs to have a literature review. So these are things that must be there indeed. So the functions of a literature review, if we can get into that, it establishes the available literature about a specific topic. When you establish a literature review, then it has to have a bit of some characteristics. So if you look at a literature review, it has to be current. Now, if you've submitted your write-up or a bit of your literature review or even objectives or introductory chapters to your supervisors, and they tell you that update the references, that is basically what we are trying to, what I'm trying to say, that it has to be current. It has to relate to what is in the what is in the information domain as per now. By now, I mean in the recent years, in the past couple of years, maybe the past 4 or 5 years, what information relates to your topic now. So if you're going to do a literature review, you are not going to use information that is, say, in the early 90s, and then bring that to now and try to relate your study. No, what is important is that you need to bring out your information and relate it to what is currently available. So if you're going to be dealing with, for instance, issues of climate change, what is currently happening? We know that climate change is a topic or is an area that is been under study for a couple of years now, even for decades. But then what's important is what is currently happening now is what would be of interest, and then how would your contribution be in the study that is now the gap that is generated from the literature review. Now, the literature review, again, another feature, it has to be specific in that it has to deal with particular topics that are in literature, and then identify gaps just as well. And another feature is that it has to be formal. By formal, I mean that it has to follow a particular structure. It has to be like part of a document, a research scholar article, such as that. So that is basically what I mean by being formal. Now, the research also, it summarizes and organizes work or ideas in order to update the reader. Now, I'm not seeing the chats that are going on there, but then hopefully I'll be getting some feedback from my colleagues right about now, if there's any, so that we can be, I can be able to get directions or be guided as to what needs to be, what information I need to emphasize on. However, I just wanted to highlight that with the literature review, what we're doing is you essentially summarizing and organizing the ideas in order to update the reader. Now, there's a reader that would be of interest to the writer, which is the student. If you are a student and you are writing and you are writing your document, or by document I mean your thesis or dissertation, there's a particular reader that one should be interested in, and that I'm posing a question to the guys that are in the platform now. There's a particular reader that you need to impress, that you need to make sure that your write-up, it flows, and when they read it, they really appreciate it accordingly, in quotes. So I don't know if you care to type in that chat box which reader am I referring to. I'll let you know if you are right. So now, when you summarize this information, organize the ideas of the work, and you update and you prepare it such that it updates the reader. The reader needs to really appreciate that they are getting information that is from a student that is well prepared, and that has gone into into the area and studied it properly in order to make that the whole entire research to have context, to have meaning, to be relevant to the current problems that are there in society or in the current world. Let me just put it like that. So the other function of the literature review is that it enables the researcher to identify relevant theories. Okay, so you go into the literature, you'll find the relevant theories that are related to your topic, and then you make sure that you put them there. You identify also methods. Some studies, they deal with or they are concerned with methodologies or methods. They summarize them, they put them together and identify approaches to a particular study, why the approach is fitting and why this one is not, and the advantages of a particular method or approach. And then if there are gaps in there, then they are able to identify it for the reader to be able to appreciate the contribution that will be made by the study. Now, the other function that it prevents the reproduction of what is currently known that is in the available literature. So if you embark on a study, you identify a topic, you have to ensure that there is a gap in literature. There's a void. You can't just do something that has already been done. If you do work on climate change, again, you need to specify which area needs attention. If you do work in animal production, for instance, or food production systems, you need to be able to clearly identify the areas that need focus that have not been studied. So when you do your literature, that's where you realize that, my particular topic has been actually done before, has been covered before, and these are the results. Then what you can do is look at the approach or the methods that have been covered, that have been done, and then yours would be to try a different method or an approach towards that particular study or to that particular topic, and then your contribution would probably be in that respect, and it would really be useful information, and other people or other users will actually engage with your results and find them much useful. So when you are getting into a literature review, it ensures that the work that you are doing really has not been done before. So it minimizes the reproduction of scientific work. You must realize that it is quite expensive to get enrolled for a particular program. For your master's degree, it's quite expensive to get even a bursary funding you to do a particular research, only to find that you are doing work that has been done by someone else in another part of the world, or someone else in your same locality or in the same country, in another university. You find that when you go online and you do a Google search with your respective topic, you must ensure that no one indeed has done it before, and then you would pay probably your contribution to knowledge, to literature, to science, because we are dealing with science, would be much more effective because no one has done that before. All right, so then there are a couple of questions as I was preparing that one has that comes to mind. Now, this talks to the students that are probably struggling with this idea of literature review as to how much literature review does one need to go through. If you are embarking on animal nutrition and we are looking at beef, I haven't settled on a topic yet, but then you're looking at beef production in South Africa, for instance, then how much literature should you cover? That is one question that comes to mind. So another student would be having, how far back do I need to go do I need to go when reviewing literature? Because remember, we said your literature review should be current, should address current issues, should be relevant to the society, or to the current society, or to the immediate society, so that you can be able to utilize and engage your results and find meaning and engage with them. So now, how far back do you need to go when you are reviewing your literature? So we're going to look a bit in and try a little bit to identify or give answers to some of these questions. What related ideas do I need to look at? What are the related topics in your subject? I mentioned the area of climate change. If we have environmentalists in attendance, if you not just environmental, even animal productions or whatever discipline you might be in, these areas might be important. It might be important for you to find meaning and like, what is climate change? How is it related to animal production? Is it the food systems, how they are impacted, crop systems, where we get food for animals? You basically need to have that golden thread in order to ensure that the topics that are in your literature review are related. But then all those things, we'll try to answer them in a little bit just as well. Which literature? The next point is that which literature provides a good theoretical framework or basis for my research. So these are also some of the questions that one would have. What references should I use? Whom should I cite? Who are the research authorities in my field? So these are things that need to be answered. Why use a particular methodology or instrument in my research? I made mention that you might find that your research has been done or this topic has been done, but then the methodology, it's totally different. Your approach that you're going to use is different from what is currently available. So now you analyze and look at different strategies or approaches to a particular research in order to, again, make your results meaningful or make your contribution meaningful in science. Now, for all this, I wanted to use some documents that are in Acrobat, or rather that I've saved in Acrobat. I took the liberty to download some research manuscript. Right. So what I'm showing right about now is a thesis from a PhD student that graduated a long time ago, I think 2020. I do not know these. I don't know these candidates, but then I just went into the university's repository. That's where we find all the academic documents or theses that have been produced by our school, or our, not particularly school, but our different colleges that we have in UNISA. So I decided to use this so that I can try to answer some of those questions that I highlighted previously that might tend to arise. How far, how much literature review, just to illustrate what is expected in the different colleges. It might differ. The requirements might differ from one particular department / college, or even even college. You might have different requirements, but then there's some things that are systematic that need to be covered, that need to be there. So from this thesis, what we are interested in is the literature review. The literature review of this particular candidate spans, I just want you to pay attention to this. We're looking at the literature review. It's entitled, sorry, let me just go back. The title of the literature review is Examination of Plastic Bag Waste Management Practices in the Central Business District of Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. So this is a thesis that passed, I believe, in our at the university here in the College of, I think it's in Florida. So having said that, I just wanted wanted us to follow. Please try to follow and let me know if I'm moving quite fast and you are not able to see, because I know this Teams tends to have some lag. So I'll try to have people following if ever they have questions. Now, the literature review is the one that is chapter 2. So from chapter 2 all the way down to its conclusion, we have from page 10 up until page 54. Now you must be aware that this is a PhD thesis. So we remember we're looking at how big or how long should the literature review be. You can see that from here it's just about 40, maybe I'll say 44 pages long of a literature review. Now, if you move to another one, there's another one. Now, this one is a master's. We'll go back to the PhD and have a discussion on that as well. If you look at this one, this now is a master's degree. In the master's degree, we have a literature review that's how long? From chapter 2, from page 11, down to subtitle 2.7. Review of literature in the study area to page 33. So this one spans over 22 pages. So you just need to have an idea of how big or how long one needs to write. One other thing I'd like to point out is that the subtitles is from point 1 up until point 2.7, 2.1 up until 2.7. In the other thesis, it's from 2.1 up until 2.5. So it's just information that needs to be there. There's another master's thesis. It starts from 2.1 up to, there are a lot of subtitles in between, and also up to 2.5. Again, spans over a number of pages. I'd say, let's remove this, from page 9 up to page 32. From page 9, maybe that would be 21 pages. I don't know, somewhere there. 21 pages or 22, 21 pages, yeah. So again, 20 pages. This one gave us, what's that, 24 pages. Again, now another master's thesis. A master's thesis, this one is from page 6 up until page 14. That's just about 7 pages, I presume. And it spans from 2.1 up until 2.10. So again, what I want to highlight or indicate in this is that your literature review, it needs to have an introduction. So probably this would be the introductory statement, and it needs to have a conclusion. The rest of the body of the literature review are the topics that need to be researched, need to be identified, that are there in literature, that one needs to just bring about and make comments, make synthesis, and appreciate that information and identify essentially the gap that the literature, the study will do. All this information, at the end of it all, it has a conclusion, or rather, what I want to highlight rather is that in every literature review, you have an introductory section, you have the conclusion or the summary. The summary is the one that indicates to the reader why and what the study is, what the study is going to do, what the contribution of the study will be. So if you look at all this material, all the thesis and dissertation, what you'll find is that at the end of talking about, at the end, when one has talked about all the topics that are in the body, what you have in as the summary is that the summary will contain the gap that exists in literature. Just a bit of illustration on that. You'll go to the literature review, the table of content. We are still on the table of content. By the way, it's important that when you are setting up when you are writing up your thesis or be it proposals just as well, the cover page, or rather this top table of content, it has to be created in Microsoft Word so that you can be able to click and follow. So I've seen some theses or some dissertations, when you go to the table of content, you can't have a follow through when you click on the subtitles that are there on the table of content. So make sure that when you do your write-up, be it the proposal or be it the final document, which is this thesis that is going to be submitted, when you are writing it, make sure that you have all these subtitles written properly and you are able to click and follow through right from the start of the table of contents, so that it's easier for us, the users and the readers of your work, to be able to engage better with that. So my point now that I was making is that the literature review will have an introductory section and it will have the conclusion. The rest of it is the body of literature that you will have sourced, that will have that will have a background or context for your study. So now, if you go to the conclusion of this particular literature review, as you can see, the following one is chapter 3. So this particular person, at the end of the literature review, highlights the purpose of the literature review, that it has established that most economically developed countries are faced with problems that include poorly enforced legislations, limited publicity, reluctant by local authorities to prosecute people who violate provisions of the legislation, inadequate budget allocation, handling of resources, and mismanagement of misplaced priorities. A review of literature about the research subject in the CBD, that is Central Business District of Bulawayo, shows that a few studies have been done on the subject. So now this is key information that you must have as the writer of your particular literature review. At the end of it all, you must be able to show the gap that exists in literature, and then your contribution, how significant will the contribution of your work be, or where will it be placed in the literature scope or in society? When we read it, how will it be relevant to us? So the writer of this particular piece now indicates that the literature shows that there's very little studies that have been done with respect to this topic in this particular area or CBD of Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. So this is a critical piece of information that I wanted to highlight. So similarly, with all the other subjects, so this one was a PhD thesis, like I showed you. It's a PhD thesis. We went to the literature review and highlighted the section that we wanted. Now, the other document is a master's one. This master's one, I took the liberty of just bringing the title there. The title is The Contribution of Peri-Urban Livestock Production on Food Security of Farmers in the Township of Butleng, Delma, South Africa. So now this is also that's the title. So the literature review around this particular title, the student went on to write about write this information about that topic, so that they encapsulate their research. Their research will make a contribution. At the end of this particular section that is highlighted, there is 2.7 that highlights the area and the need for this research. So you see now with this one, I can't click and follow through to go to the page numbers. So you see that it's important that when we are writing your research as students or as researchers, it's important that you prepare your table of contents properly using Microsoft Word, and you automate it. You're supposed to put it in headers so that you can be able to click that, give the instruction to Microsoft Word to say create a table of contents, and then the styles and everything is done. So I think also this is something that is being done or being taught at various colleges. So it's very much handy for the end users of your documents, for us, the end users. So now we have to skip down and find out where page 33 is. And then probably there. So what I'm going forward to, I want to find the gap and see and realize the contribution that this study is making. All this is found on page 33, which is the last subtitle of the lit review. So this is the section now. When we are reading this, we are supposed to make context, to make relevance, find the topic, find relevance, why this this topic is important. Let me just read the last section there. Hopefully it's contained in that part. Boolean is a peri-urban area in South Africa. It's situated in the Victor Khanye local municipality, Mpumalanga province, one of the 9 provinces in South Africa. It's under a predominantly agricultural town called Delmas, which is heavily involved in both crop and livestock production. So we read that one, but then it still doesn't come out really why is this study relevant and important. So I didn't want to take time and read the whole thing, but then I hope you are able to follow. It says during the apartheid area years in South Africa, peri-urban areas called townships were segregated areas. I don't know why this information is coming back here, but then what is supposed to be in this section is the contribution, the gap that exists in literature. I'm hoping it's there. I think as students, you can take the time and follow through and read it. Again, this is another one. So I went through a PhD thesis, a master's thesis, and again, this is a master's thesis. Hopefully, it will do justice to what we are trying to achieve. Again, the literature review. How long should the literature review be? From page 9, it spans from page 9 all the way to page 32. That again is 21 pages maybe, and it will have an introduction. It should have also a conclusion statement, and this one I'm able to click and follow through. And it is in this section where we find relevance. Okay, we find meaning and relevance of the whole research study. Why is it relevant, and the contribution that it has. So, because we realize that there's a research gap, and then our contribution to research or to science will be of great results when it comes to this particular study. I think that was the last one, but then I won't get into this one. This is also another study that is available in the repository. It's also a master's degree in animal science, I think, in agriculture. Again, if you go through the literature review, you can have a look there. From page 6 down to page 14, this one is 7 pages, from 2.1 up until 2.10. So essentially, you are having your 10 subtopics, at most 10 with what we've seen. This is the most one that covers a lot of subtopics, main topics rather. It's from 2.1 up until 2.10, I'd say. Then in between, you have different subtitles, and then you should be able to be well on your way. So we're going to discuss a bit on what you write in the whole body of your literature review. So what I've just done now, we've been talking about the introduction and the conclusion, that it needs to be there. It's important. The introduction guides the reader. The conclusion gives the reader an idea of the gap that is there in literature and how the study is significant, and the contribution of the study will be significant in society or in science at large. So now let's get into the whole body of the literature review. Now, when you write a literature review, I've made a couple of steps that are important for the readers, or that are important for the students to do. It's important that you identify literature for your review from various sources. You need to be careful. You need to carefully identify the pieces of literature, the sources that you're going to use for your review. Step 2, you analyze and you categorize the literature. You identify themes, gaps, and debates that are in existence. And then number 3, you should be able to synthesize or generate some information from that whole list of citations and information that has been gathered. And then you should be able to organize the body of the literature. And then finally, the final step would be to write it. Where to find this literature? You have different sources. Number one, you use peer-reviewed research articles. Number two, you use peer-reviewed conference proceeding papers. Number three, you use books. Now, I've highlighted these in red because they indicate that, or rather, what happens is when you have the production of these involve peer reviewing. That is an important exercise for any scientific publication or scientific write-up. Our write-ups, you must understand that as students, what the write-up that you are going to do, it's scientific, it's critical, and all that, and very much important, so to say. So it has to be backed up with evidence. It has to be backed up with scientific principles, theories. So all this is important. When you are doing these publications, it will be peer reviewed. Any publication will be peer reviewed, and then it will be approved and then published. So material that is not published or not peer reviewed, that is not, it's generally not so good to use. The reader that you have, that you want to impress, will not particularly be impressed when you have materials or when you have citations that are not peer reviewed. So it's important that you use peer reviewed materials. That would be journal articles and even books. The chapters that we publish or the chapters that we do for books, they get to be peer reviewed just as well. Gray literature, that is non-peer reviewed journals and conference proceedings. That is what is called gray literature. So as researchers or as scientific researchers, as I said, you will be approached. There are some journals that try to cut the process of publishing. They'll approach you and ask you to write a small piece on a particular topic, and then they promise that they'll publish it for you free. And then all these good things that you want to do as a upcoming researcher, they'll approach you to say, come publish with us. I mean, come send your manuscript to us, and we'll publish it at no cost. In 2 weeks' time, it will be published. So immediately when you receive emails and communication like that, it just raises red flags that it's probably not peer reviewed and it's from predatory journals. So you must be able to sift all that material and be careful how to proceed when you're having such situations. I'm talking about this because it's all under the gray literature. The gray literature is not something that is approved for or acceptable as you are writing your research papers and also theses. Government official publications, those ones you can use, but then of course they are not peer reviewed just as well. So that is why we can use them, but then it's not. You shouldn't solely make you shouldn't solely make statements that are sweeping, that are very much strong, based on material that has not been peer reviewed. Professional magazines and newsletters can also be used, but then again, they're not peer reviews. It's just an expert opinion of the editor and their colleagues, and then they run the story and publish it. So again, we do not recommend the utilization of such material. Archived information just as well. If it's not been peer reviewed, it is also not a reliable source for utilization. So the first three pieces of information would be good would be reliable sources and good for utilization in your research. Finding the relevant literature. Where do you find literature? If you're having a topic, animal nutrition, or you're having like Dr. Tony indicated that, I mean, poultry production. if I'm having my research in egg production and things that influence egg production, if I'm having I'm testing an enzyme, a dietary enzyme, for instance, including it in the diet, I'll have to be able to find relevant information around the utilization of enzymes, how they work in the gut, and how the animal digests, or rather how it degrades material that may not be degradable, or that needs to be degraded before they reach the small intestines where they can be absorbed, for instance. Now, where will you get the information? You need to consult your subject, your library subject specialists. That's available. I put that university website. They are available for anyone or for all of us as researchers. We can use them. They can help us in order to localize very reliable information that you can use in preparing for your research topic. Your school's department, or your department, or your school's that's an error there. Your school or your department, I want to put it like that. Your school or your department, they are also a reliable resource. Like I did right now, I went to the repository when we were talking about the structure of the literature review, how it should be, how long it should be, what it should entail. Excuse me. You can use the repository information in order to be able to use that as a resource. In fact, for some of you, as you are having supervisors, your supervisors have had predecessors. You have had predecessors, other students going in ahead of you, graduating. Use their material as a resource when you are preparing for your write-up. Get an idea how the structure of the literature review should be, what is acceptable in your department, what is acceptable by even your supervisor, because the supervisor has done this before, or presumably your supervisors have done this before, have had students going on before, and what you can do, you use that as a resource, as a very important resource in your write-up, because that's where you get to understand what the ideas, the way my supervisor would like me to frame things, frame points. Excuse me, the way my supervisor would like me to have ideas presented, have methodologies presented in the literature review, have the topics flowing from one point to another, or from one topic to another. The mind map that needs to be generated, all that information can be found if you could simply go to the repository and go to your school, go to your college repository. You'll find this information that's there and use that as a resource, and it will help you really to be able to have a structure in your mind, what needs to be done and how you need to proceed with your literature review, how you need to have it structured. It will be there. So just like I've used my example before in the PDF files. So that's what you need to have an awareness of. Point number 3, use scientific databases. E-resources, UNISA libraries, online services are having all this information. Okay, Google Scholar is one of the things that we all use. It's generally there. It doesn't, even if the university is not subscribing to it, but then we have access, all of us or anyone has access to Google Scholar. Now, you'd use your university credentials to via the library services or online library services to have access to things such as Scholar, to have access to things such as Scopus, Web of Science, Science Direct, Agricultural Environmental Science Database, Ecology Abstracts. All these are the search the databases that contain different pieces of literature that are available. Water Resources Abstract and GeoRef. All these are available for students to use as the sources that will give or that will yield different literature on a particular topic. Move to the next slide. Now, when you are doing your research, it's important that you use what is called, when you are on the searches. I'm sorry, I'm getting disturbed on the side. So now, when you are doing your relevant research, when you are searching for your literature on the databases themselves, you use keywords, you use Boolean operators. You use Boolean operators in the search queries. Boolean operators are the use of capitals and or not, quotation marks, brackets, near, and that $sign. So now we use these. I'll explain in a little bit. We use the word and in capitals, like for instance, when you search the word travel tourism. If you do not put anything, you just type travel tourism on Google Scholar, it will give you results that include travel and tourism by default. It will put and for you by default. And the results that you will get will be results that are in this intersection. I hope you are able to follow with my highlight there, my red dot. You'll get results that are linked. The results that you get, they will have both travel and tourism. But then when you type the word travel or tourism, what you'll get results that are in this union, results that are of this union. You get some results will have tourism, some results will have travel and tourism, both of them in the same article, and then you get articles that are just particularly talking about tourism. Why? Because you clicked or you entered the word or. So this is the utilization of Boolean operators. That is what I'm explaining here. So if you click travel, not tourism, because you'll find that in some research, in some searches, when you search for some material, it goes along with another topic. So if you want to eliminate the other topics such as tourism, you will only find the results that include tourism alone. Then again, if you put the other intersection, you put or. So I think you can follow the example that is shown here. That when you want results that involve travel or tourism and web, so what you will find is that you will find an intersection of travel and tourism, an intersection also of tourism and web, which is this one, plus an intersection of all three. So this will give you a whole lot of results, articles going into the millions. So, or rather, it will give you not going into the millions, but per se, but then you'll have a lot of results that you need to work through, such that you will have to sit and try to eliminate, and there's a criteria for doing that. The other point I wanted to mention is when you add the word, these quotation marks. When you add quotation marks, it simply means that you can type one or two or three words in your search, in your word search. So if you put travel tourism in quotation marks, the results that you're going to get will be we'll have travel tourism going together. So if you do a search, they'll be highlighted in bold and they'll be going together in all the articles that you are sifting through. If you type South Africa and you put it in quotation marks in Google search or in Google Scholar or in Scopus, all these other search engines, if you put South Africa in quotation marks, so you'll get results that are having South Africa, the words South and Africa together. That is what it means. So it's either quotation marks or brackets. They'll do this almost a similar function depending on the search engine. If you put near, now near is the one that describes the region or the area. So if you type travel tourism near South Africa, that basically it specifies the region in which to do the search. So the $sign is simply a wildcard. So a wildcard is you type digest and a wildcard, and then it will find everything that starts with digest, whether it's digestive or digestion or digestibility. If you put digest and a $sign, then basically you are looking for results that has to do with with digestion, anything that finishes up with that has the prefix digest. For example, I'm using the word digest as an example there. All right, so now still on the search for relevant literature, how do you evaluate, how do you check this literature? Sorry, how do you check this literature? How, because you are now doing the search, you are typing, if you are doing a research on a particular test diets, for instance, moringa in the diet of indigenous chickens, for instance, that would be my topic. Moringa in the diet of indigenous chickens. You type it there in your search query. What the results will, you will get a lot of, you'll get a lot of results. A lot of people have done the study, but then you can still have a contribution just as well. But then what the point I'm making is that you get a lot of results. In these results, you will find something called cited by. I don't know if it's something I can illustrate right away. Dr. Tony?
Yes, Doc.
Is my slide visible again? I'm sharing the Web of Science page.
Not so visible.
It's not so visible. Okay, how about Google Scholar?
Maybe colleagues can indicate if it's visible, but from my side, it's not that clear. We can see Google Scholar.
Okay, you can see the Google Scholar. So what I searched there is chicken and diets. So that was my Google search, or that was my Google search on Google Scholar. The results that I got is, for instance, one of the results is this article. If you can see this article, and these are some of the, this is one of the authors. It has been cited 281 times. So if you are doing a search using these two words, this is how you know that this piece of information or this article that relates to or chickens and diets is very much reliable and important because it has been cited, or it has been cited 281 times. If you look the one below, performance and intestinal mucosa development of broiler chickens, fed diets containing Saccharomyces cerevisiae cell wall. This is a yeast, I think. It has been cited 401 times. So this material obviously is not new. It's as old as 2001, but then it being cited 401 times, it indicates a level of reliability. So what we are looking for is reliable information and from reliable authors. If something has been cited 330 times versus something that has been cited 20 times, you must be able to make a distinction there that, okay, the information that has been cited a whole lot of more times, 400 times, then that information is probably reliable. You can use in your research, or you can use that author's information, or you can get an idea that, okay, if you feel that this article is quite old, what you can do is you follow the authors and find out what they've been working on recently, and then if it happens to relate to your topic again, that is something you can use for research. Because you can, if you use this as a citation, then you might get criticized by your supervisors or your readers that the information is quite old or your references are quite old. So back to the slide now, is that when you evaluate the literature or the articles that you go to find on Google search, you use the counted by. That is one criteria that you can use. You can read the abstracts and check for relevance. You can use the bibliography or reference sections of other articles that have been published. For instance, the one that we've been talking about now that has been cited 400 times, you can go to the reference section and check the authors and check what they have been writing about, or check those people, and then if they are having relevant literature, then you continue in that line and you include it in your write-up. So now in the next slide or in this table, it's something that one might find useful in your write-up, because when you prepare your literature review, there is a lot of information that is out there in the world. I typed already, I made an example of typing chicken and diets. So there's a lot, if you're working on chicken diets, there's a lot of information that is available. So you have to be able to sift it. You have to be able to narrow down to the particular topic that you want. And then you use something that is a form of a spreadsheet. This is now my advice or my guidance. It's not something that is standard. It's not something that is that is out there that UNISA wants you to do when you're writing your literature review. But then I found it to be something that is very useful when you are writing your literature review, because quite honestly, when you're writing your literature review, that's where things gets to be stuck, if I might say, put it like that. That's where students tend to get stuck when writing up their thesis. That's where things actually get to be dumped there in the literature review. But then it shouldn't be like that. If you know, or if you use it properly, if you use the literature review or you prepare it properly, one should be able to use this literature as evidence so that you can properly make your claims and statements. In your discussions later on in the next coming chapters, you use information from your literature review to make your discussion points or to argue your points, to ensure that, okay, my results actually align with so and so. My results actually do not align or are in contrast of what has been reported by another author. So by so doing, you are able to have evidence. So by this, creating a spreadsheet, you are gathering essentially your own evidence of literature review and findings. So when you go out there, when I know you don't like to go anyway, but then when you go to do your literature review, you put it in your, you use your keywords, you use those Boolean operators I mentioned, you will get a lot of literature. And hence you need to go through that information. Some of you will go through even your supervisor's information or publications. So all that information, everything that you go through needs to be put in a table such as this. This one is my own creation, ladies and gentlemen. Do not hammer me on this one, that it's UNISA, like I've mentioned already. The information that you go through, you write the year, the author, the title, the reference, the focus or objectives of that article, because mainly we are focusing we focus on articles and publications or even books as researchers. Then what you do, you put also the region where the paper was published or where the experiment was done. The country essentially will suffice. So if it was done, the research was done in Egypt, in Singapore, in China, in America, it gives you an array of information there that you can put in these columns. So every one of the studies that you can do, that you go through, you put it in a table and you summarize the information like that. You determine the methodology that was used, you determine the gap that was identified by those authors, and then you write the gap and their findings. All this information you can get when you go through the abstract. Now, some information may not be clear. It might require that you go through the rest of the document. So you'll find it certain sections of the document, such as the results. So you find the findings in the results section, you put it in there. So this information can be populated. Then, having populated this information, one can be able to have the long list of the years that has been covered by your literature review. Then you are able to discuss that okay, my literature review spans from 2001 up until 2023, 2 decades long, you have literature review and you are able to draw up some information there. What happened before 2001? There was no publication, or there were minimal publications, and you make your comments there. Again, another thing that is quite interesting with a spreadsheet such as this is that you can put the region. When you have a region, then you have an understanding of the places or the countries in which your particular research has been done. If you're looking once again at areas of climate change, you go to Europe, you go to Middle East or Asia, you go to even China, you go to Australia. All the publications, you'll be able to easily make out and you'll be able to make conclusions based on the table that, okay, you've seen that there's recent publications, and you'll give references. You'll cite the authors, that recent publications in the recent years, or in the past 2 decades, basically concentrated in different areas. I didn't put the information here deliberately because I know students, they tend to just copy everything, and I know what students tend to do, and I've experienced quite a bit. So that's why I left it blank for people to you'll be able to ask questions anyway. Now, again, the methodologies that have been done. If you're talking about poultry production, if you're talking about how a particular enzyme has been used successfully, then you determine how the method, how was it given? Was it given in the water? Was it given in the food? Was it given in the form of, was it injected? I don't know if ever they do inject, so you indicate there. So at the end of it all, you have an overview of what happened, or of the research that has been done and the methods that have been used with respect to the utilization of enzymes. So you can be able to have a nice overview there and be able to even identify the gaps that have been done. That, okay, all the enzymes have been given in water. If you have water, then why is it not the case that the enzymes have been given in food? Then that would possibly be your gap. Once again, in literature, you'll be able to fill. Again, the studies normally have a gap. They want to give information. They'll indicate that such and such, like we did with the PhD student that we looked at, the PhD candidate's thesis. It indicates information about it indicated rather in its review that there was no information about plastic waste management, particularly in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. So now that on its own could be a gap, and then the findings would be there to fill in the gap. So essentially, when you have a table such as this, one can be able to then use it to make a proper analysis of what is done. So with this, what this will do is essentially give you the evidence so that you can be able to write your literature review properly. So now this is my example that I used, that I'm willing to share and use. That, okay, this is what I did when I was looking at the effect of lucerne in chickens, for instance. What I did, I populated a table such as this, wherein you have information about the title, the region, I've mentioned that one, this animal species, the aims, and so forth. And all that I've used that, and I've populated it. This will take a while. Like normally, like in normal cases, when you are given an assignment to do, you need to definitely give it a couple of days. When you are doing the literature review just as well, you need to give it a couple of days as well. It might be weeks. It might take you the whole month whilst you are trying to populate and finalize and go over all the literature. So essentially what this table will do, it will establish, or it will give you the evidence of what has been done, all the way from number 1 up until I don't know how much literature that will be covered by that you will go through. But make sure that as you go through all the literature that you go through, you need to be able to populate such a table as this one. Then you'll be able to describe, you'll be able to, for instance, when you look at this one, it has a column for improvement. Then I had yes or no. So now when you look at the effect of lucerne in chickens, that would be my title, or that was my search. Did really lucerne, does lucerne, or is it alfalfa, affect chickens? So this one investigated its effect when you're supplementing it in the diet of chickens. And then they looked at the parameters they looked at were growth, small intestine histomorphology, and digestibility. This one looked at ducks as animal species, and we see that there was yes. I put in yes there. And then also this one, it looked at the effect of digestibility, the effect of lucerne on digestibility. The answer was yes. So if you read on here, you know that, okay, there were positive results, or the results were in the positive. So at the end of it all, you have yes, yes, yes. So all these people are in agreement that lucerne has a possible effect on the growth performance, or the pre-sequel digestibility, for instance, or the intestinal histomorphology. It all has an impact on. I mean, it all comes from just by feeding lucerne. So if you have yes, yes, yes here, so you can have a general statement from all these authors, for instance. I know that this might look familiar to those that have done probably systematic reviews. That is something also that is well in the domain of literature, just as well. When you are going to go on and do your studies, people do such things. But then, even if you're not doing a systematic literature review, this information is quite critical, because it forms your evidence that you indeed did go through the literature. You read different articles that are in existence with respect to a particular topic. Then you are able to make conclusions. You are able to draw, make statements from just basically from the compilation of this table. When you, after populating this information, believe me, one would be able to make comments about the utilization of such as lucerne. Having gone through all this material, having read through all these articles, not just the 7, but even 70 maybe, you will be able to have an opinion about the utilization of lucerne in chicken. And that, as a guide, you can be able to then write your literature review and have a better and feel better about it, because normally when you write a literature review, it tends to feel like a punishment that one is to do. But then you need to get over that. You need to follow something that you have an interest in, and then you'll be able to write, and you'll be motivated even better to read, because you'll be seeing the results. When you write annotated bibliographies like this, it gives you that ability to just, it will give you that interest in your research work, that okay, so much has been done. Somewhere in here, there is a column for the years also. Then you are able to know how long you've been doing the study, and how long it spans over how many decades, the literature that you have been reviewing. And if it's sufficient, it will be enough for you to start writing. How is the literature review organized? The literature review may be organized according to sequence. I've already made reference to years. So if you have years in your table, again, you'll be able to indicate this table has a column for the years. You'll know exactly, okay, you'll know the chronology of events in which the different subjects were talked about. So that is what we mean by chronology or sequence. Some subjects will tend to follow themes or topics that are in society. Some subjects or some literature may be organized also according to the methodologies that are there. Nowadays, people talk of, or rather our scholars or scholars in the college, they talk of other methods, different approaches to scientific writing, such as qualitative analysis. So that same subject or that same topic can be done using another approach. So if you are in that space, you can also explore that. Some also, the literature may also be organized according to geographical or regional locations. Again, I wish to go back to this slide where I show that there are different regions. These articles were published in the different regions. For example, we have Indonesia, Europe, Germany, France, China, and Europe again, Germany or France. So these publications came from these different regions. So from just by looking at the regions, one can be able to make a comment that, okay, my topic has been covered or has been done, or most of the research that has been done in this area comes from Europe and Asia. What comes from Africa in this part of the world where we are sitting? Then it's again a gap for you to be able to pursue and make studies and recommendations, because you might find different results anyway. Theories again could be another criteria to categorize your topics. Okay, so again, what I'm trying to highlight with this slide is just that when you are writing a literature review, you can cut it, you can section it according to all these points that have been highlighted, so that you can be able to properly express yourself and make general overviews and even highlight the gaps that are there in literature. Now, the other step is that you need to analyze your collected literature. I feel like I'm repeating because this is the same thing I've been saying when I showed you the table. When you look at that table, you'll be able to properly analyze and give meaning to that topic. What do they say about X? What do the authors say about a particular phenomenon? Please excuse me. What do the authors say about a particular phenomenon? What are the findings? What are the conclusions? All that information you can get once you've populated that spreadsheet. Are there different opinions or contradictions or arguments in literature about a particular phenomenon, about X, about a particular enzyme, for instance? I use that one as an example. If you use an enzyme to feed your chickens, to feed even pigs, if you add an enzyme in the diet of pigs, let me just phrase it properly. If you add an enzyme or supplement an enzyme in the diet of pigs, what literature is there about that information? What are the different opinions that are there in literature on that said topic? Okay, so that is basically what I'm trying to say there by the point number 2. What are the common methods that are used? So now, again, there's a row for methods there. You can put in the methods that, okay, you can administer the enzyme using this method or this other method. And if there's a gap, you can highlight that gap that, okay, this is my contribution in literature. In my research, will use a particular procedure because there's no information in this particular protocol. What do they assume? What do they imply? So this one talks to what are the assumptions made by the authors when they were producing those findings. So now you also be questioning. So this line of questioning now is of a higher level, I presume, of a PhD level, because normally you tend to want to question the methodologies and protocols and develop even your own protocols when you are doing your own research. What has not been said about the topic? So now, again, this generates the gap in literature. How is your literature relevant? So again, this information comes at the concluding part after having talked about the different topics, or having mentioned and talked about or discussed the different topics and phenomenon, then how is your research relevant? That part comes at the end, or in just about when you are concluding. If you miss this information, then you will have done all that work for nothing, because you go through literature so that you can highlight gaps and bring out the relevance. Now, analyze the literature that you have collected. So this is one and the same thing. So you summarize the sources that you provided, use transitional, you use transitioning words properly. For example, you mention what someone said about a particular phenomenon, and then in addition, another author said this, and the other. Furthermore, the author, this has an impact on the environment. So I'm using that statement as an illustration. But then, what I need to highlight, or I feel I need to highlight, is that you are citing people in your literature, or as you write, you use this to connect. You use these words to connect. To connect the different sources, or the different articles that you are citing in your lit review. These basically, these make up wonderful connecting words. However, that one shows contradictions, or in contrast to, or therefore, thus, that is in agreement, So when you are writing, and then you indicate, when you say thus, it means that all that you have been saying is aligned with the statement that will follow. All right, so this is probably the last, or the last slide. Points to remember. Ensure that your literature review points on the current or the status of the research that is there. Sorry, when you write, you need to remember that, or you need to have an awareness that your literature review is current, and your literature review also, it helps you to show what has previously been reported, what has previously been accomplished by other authors. So then your contribution will make sense to the reader. Make sure that you evaluate the weaknesses and the gaps of all the articles that you go through, so that you can be able to give comments, of course. So I mentioned that all research pieces are subject to criticism, because there's no research article that is perfect. Okay, there's no research article, even if your best, the people that you esteem highly in your field of study, they are also not perfect. They also can be criticized. So it's important that you have that awareness, that as you study, as you look at the different articles and researching them, identify their weaknesses and their gaps, so that you can be able to fill them, or even learn from them as you continue to do your write-up or research as a research fellow yourself. You group the literature accordingly, so that you can be able to categorize it and give it subtitles. You connect the review to your research. So that I wrote as a point to remember, that when you write your research, or when you write your literature review, at the end, it must be able, or rather you must be able to connect the literature review that you have written to your current research. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. If I may scroll back, because this is just the last slide, I had a slide that showed this piece. So this is to say that the last point to remember was just that, to highlight that, ensure that you connect your research to what is currently there. So by doing your literature review, you would have built the context around your study. such that when you have your results, they make a positive contribution to the literature that is well in existence there. So having said that, I think I've reached the end of my slides. So having said that, I'd wish you all the best in your literature review writing. And yes, I think I could also be available to assist with these slides and also comment on your, even on your literature or in your write-ups of your literature just as well, so that you can be able to produce a good thesis.